All right. Last week, we started a new series called Jesus Goggles, as you can see. All of us, every one of us, have tinted lenses, so to speak, through which we look at the world, through which we interpret what happens to us in the world. It's a perspective that can have a lot of impact on our life. Like I said, we all have it, all of us, it affects all of us, but we do get to choose what lenses we look through. The world has its own set. Like last week we started out talking about guilt and grace. The world looks through a lens of guilt. The world doesn't know how to get away from guilt. However, Jesus, in his ministry, he looked through a completely different lens. When he looked at us, he didn't see guilt, he didn't see shame, he didn't see everything that went with that. He saw grace. He saw a way to overcome that guilt. This morning, we're going to add another one to the mix. We're going to start off with the world's perspective, and that's pain. Has anybody in here never experienced pain? I didn't expect any hands. We all do, right? Let me ask you. Say you are 99% healthy, but the 1% that's wrong is a searing headache right behind your right eye. And somebody was to come to you and they were to say, well, how are you today? What would your answer be? I'm 99% great. Or would you be like, oh man, I got a headache and it's killing me. I don't know what to do about it. Yeah, I just want to lay down and die. This headache is so bad, and the Advil and the aspirin's not working. Doesn't matter that our fingers are fine, our toes are fine, our elbows, knees, arms, legs. Everything else is just fine. When one part has pain, it colors everything, doesn't it? You know, when we're suffering from pain, when we suffer from long-term pain, it really starts to affect how we see things. It affects how we look at the events in our life. Things that should make us happy sometimes don't, because the pain gets in the way. And we're not just talking about physical pain either. You know, physical pain, in some ways, is the least damaging. You start getting into emotional pain, psychological pain, even there is such a thing as spiritual pain. Guilt plays a big part in that we talked about last week. When we're in pain, it changes everything, doesn't it? When we focus on the pain, it really starts to change everything. Now, over years of ministry, I've known people who've had to suffer with pain. Because sometimes we get in a situation, our body does something or something happens to us where that pain just does not want to go away. And if we're not careful, that pain starts to color everything. And the color of pain is this: hopelessness, despair, sometimes anger. When we let the pain, when we look at the world through our pain, it really robs the world of so much beauty. But the question is, what do we do with pain? You know, if you're talking about physical pain, we may say, well, you know, take an Advil, take an aspirin. Well, they got harder things if that's not working. But the medicines don't always work, do they? You ever had a pain that the medicine just wouldn't make go away? A few months ago, I went in to the dentist. Dentists are people too. I keep reminding myself that. I had a tooth that a filling had apparently cracked, and it had gotten messed up underneath, so they were going to do a root canal. The last two words you want to hear at a dentist. They're going to do a root canal, put on a crown, and I'm like, okay, I'm a big boy. I'll try to do this without crying. And I get in there, and they go, and they numb me up, and they take the drill, and they start drilling. And I know instantly something's not quite right. Because the numbing stuff didn't work. And I'm pretty sure I bent the arms on that chair. And she goes, "Are you hurting?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh." She goes, well, okay, well, hold on. So she takes the syringe and the Novocaine, and she sticks it up in the tooth. Squeezes it off. And my eyes are watering. No, I'm crying, okay? I'm crying at this point. And I think, but okay, this little pain is going to numb. I'm going to be okay. It doesn't work. So she tries it again. This is my third dose of Novocaine, by the way. Then they decide to take my blood pressure. Did y'all know that Novocaine raises blood pressure? And I don't care if it didn't. Having somebody drill in a tooth that's not numb would all by itself. I'm not going to tell you what my blood pressure was. All I'll tell you is they wanted me to go to the hospital. And I said, no, just let me out of this place. It was pain colors how we see the world. I was not in a good mood. Not just for the rest of that day. Pretty much the day after and the day after. The memory of that still haunts me just a little bit. I'm supposed to go back to the dentist, and for some reason, I can't schedule it. Always having conflicts. Sometimes pain doesn't go away. Sometimes we have to deal with the hurt. Well, if pain is the lens through which the world views itself, if pain is the lens through which the world interprets what happens to it, is there another way? Is there another way of looking at the world? Now, since this is the series, you know there probably is. If the world looks through the lens of pain, Jesus has another lens. A lens that triumphs, that trumps, that overcomes pain. What would it take? I'm not going to give you the answer just yet because I want you to stop and think. What would it take to overcome pain if we're not talking about a drug? Because drugs are actually just temporary. They mask the pain. They don't actually overcome it. Well, it's a very small word with a very big meaning. One of the first words you can learn to read. Only 3 letters. But man, does it have a big meaning. It's joy. Now you may be asking yourself, oh, hold on, Kenneth. Wait, hold it. What in the world does joy have to do with pain? Because you can't have joy when you have pain, right? Everybody shake your head like this. Wrong. Joy can be had anywhere, anytime, in any circumstances. You know, often when preachers and teachers, when we get up to teach, one of the first things we say is, hey, joy and happiness are not the same thing. That's actually only partly correct. Right? Happiness is definitely a part of joy. Happiness is definitely an ingredient in joy. The thing is, this little word goes much deeper. Where happiness really depends on circumstances, for instance, me sitting in that dentist office with the drill in my tooth and Novocaine that doesn't want to work, I was not happy at all. And I wasn't going to be. There's not enough painkiller in the world to make me happy in that particular situation. But joy, the cool thing about joy is a type of happiness that doesn't depend on the situation. In fact, joy overcomes those situations. Where happiness is dependent on what's going on. You know, you're out of work. You lost your job. You're not sure where you're going to get your next job or your next paycheck or how you're going to pay your bills or buy groceries. It's sort of hard to be happy in that situation, isn't it? Yet joy is something that can transcend any of those situations. Turn your Bibles over to John chapter 15. In John chapter 15, Jesus puts it this way. He's talking about joy. He's talking about the role of joy. He says, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you that I've told you so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be made complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, to lay down his life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I've called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. And so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my commandment. Love each other. Did you notice at the beginning of that? He says, I gave you my joy, and I want my joy in you to be complete. Or another way is say, I want it to be whole. I want it all to be there. I want this joy, in fact, to be perfect. Joy is a quality of life that we're supposed to live in. It's a mindset that as Christians, we're always supposed to have. Now think about when Jesus is telling this to his disciples. Right? If you back up, in this part of John, Jesus is giving them a long talk. The reason he's giving them a long talk is Jesus is about to die. All right, this is his farewell address. He's just observed the Passover with his apostles. They were all in the upper room. Judas has gone out. He's about to betray Jesus. The guards are going to come. He's going to be taken away. He's going to be beaten. He's going to be executed. His disciples are going to scatter to the winds because they're going to be afraid. And yet, in the middle of all that, Jesus said, I'm giving you my joy. Because joy wasn't dependent on any of those circumstances. I'll suggest this. Even when Jesus was hanging on the cross, he was still looking at the world through eyes of joy. Because he could look at the world and he could say things like, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And he was also looking beyond that particular moment. He knew what that moment was going to do, not just for his disciples, but for everybody. And because of that, he could face the most horrendous situation any of us could probably think of. And he could say, I came to give you my joy. And I want that joy to be perfect in your life. There is a certain power in rejoicing. Now here's why I said earlier that we sometimes say joy and happiness are two different things, and that's not totally true. Sometimes we try to distill joy to the point we take emotion out of it. And that's just not right. All right? We are actually called to exhibit joy. You cannot exhibit joy like this. That's how you look after you have a root canal. No, when you rejoice, you're smiling. You're happy. You may be jumping for joy. You just hear that phrase, jump for joy? There is a power in rejoicing. In the Old Testament, just so you know that this idea of joy and being happy, and God wants his people to be full of joy, and he wants us to rejoice, and he wants us to look at the world through joy-filled eyes. That's nothing new. You go back to the book of Deuteronomy. We're going to look at Deuteronomy 16, just one of the little sections. What's the best way to say this? God loves a party. Do you know that? I don't mean the bad parties. Everybody wants to jump to the bad, stupid stuff. Those aren't good parties. God loves a good party. God loves a party that really makes people happy in a real way. Do you know how many times God commanded his people to have a party? In fact, he gave them 3 big ones every year. And for 2 of those, he was very blunt about it. He said, you're going to do this, and you're going to have fun. And you're going to rejoice. And you're going to be happy. And you're going to celebrate. This part of Deuteronomy gives us one of those 3 great feasts. He says in verse 13, celebrate the festival of the tabernacles for 7 days. After you've gathered the produce of your threshing floor and of your winepress, be joyful at your festival. Sometimes we think back to the Old Testament and we think, okay, man, They had to do all these ceremonies and bring all these animals and kill all these animals and put blood everywhere. And man, that was a grim, bad time. No, it wasn't. 90% of what God told them to do was enjoy the things that He had given them. Yes, He set boundaries. He said, don't get drunk. Don't cheat on your spouse. Don't lie. Don't steal. Because do any of those things actually bring happiness? Really, do they? No, they don't. In fact, the rules He gave us were to protect our joy. If we live the way He said to live, we can really start to enjoy life. And here in Deuteronomy, He says, I want you to have a good time at this festival. In fact, now, I'm not sure some people I know would enjoy this festival because the idea was you left your house, you built a little lean-to, and you camped out for a few days. Some people like that, some people don't. They didn't have RVs back then. That was not an option. Okay. But for them, it really wasn't that big of a deal. They didn't have central heat and air to begin with, and they didn't have cable TV. So moving outside their house wasn't as drastic of a change. And they were remembering a time when they had no homes. But notice when He says to do it. He says when the harvest has come in. You've got your work in. Now for agricultural community, the harvest is the time of the most work. You got to get it all done. If you don't get that produce in as it starts to ripen, you're going to lose it all. So He says when you've got the figs and the grapes and the wheat and the barley and all of that stuff in, He goes, sit down, relax, and have a party. I want you to rejoice. I want you to enjoy the things I've just given you. So be joyful at your festival. Your sons, now He's telling who He wants to enjoy this festival. You, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, and the Levites, the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns. Did He leave anybody out? Only thing He might have added was the donkeys and the camels. But everybody else is included. For 7 days, celebrate the festival to the Lord your God at the place the Lord will choose. For the Lord your God will bless you in all of your harvest and in all of the work of your hands, and your joy will be complete. Joy is a matter of perspective. It's really, to have joy, to live in joy, to have a way of seeing the world through eyes of joy, really depends on what you're looking at. You see, if we're looking at the problems, and I don't mean acknowledging them, I mean dwelling on them. You know, we got problems in our life, we have pain in our life, we have issues in our life. If we dwell on those, we're going to have a hard time finding joy. Joy looks somewhere else. Joy looks past the problems. Let me ask you a question. Simple question. Feel free to answer if you want to. What problem are you facing right now that you will still be facing in heaven? Anything? The answer is none. Right? There are no problems that we have now that we're going to face in heaven. That means even if I'm facing chronic pain right now, through God's eyes, through Jesus' eyes, through eyes of joy, I can see past that. Because God's already promised an entire eternity. Well, that's not going to be the case. Where He's going to wipe away every tear. He's going to fix everything. He Himself, God Himself, is going to make sure we don't suffer anymore. And how long is eternity? How long does that last? It's a trick question, right? Goes on and on and on. You know, maybe we get 100 years on this earth. What would 100 years of pain compare to a billion years, and then that again, of joy and happiness and peace and everything else God's promised us when He perfects everything? See, joy really is a matter of perspective, because with joy, we look past what we're dealing with right now and we say, you know what? Not going to take me down. I've told you all about my great-grandmother, Grandma Floyd. This was my mother's father's mother. I got to know my Grandma Floyd, which was really cool, even though she was substantially older when I knew her. She lived to be almost 106. Lived a long time. In her life, she buried 2 husbands. She buried the first one by the time she was 40. She buried her second one in her 50s. She also lost some children. She lost some grandchildren. You could look at Mama Floyd's life and say, man, that lady faced some hard times. But you know what? Me growing up, of all of the old people in my life, she was the happiest. I never was around Mama Floyd that I didn't think, man, this old lady's fun. She loved to fish. She'd take us fishing. And one time I was probably, 7, 8, 9 years old. She took me down to this stock tank. And we stopped at the guy's house before we went down there. And he said, I just stocked this pond, so whatever you catch, throw back. They were all little catfish. But hey, for a 7-year-old, these fish were biting. They were hungry. We were having fun. Just little bitty perch hooks. And Mama Floyd was laughing every time I pulled a fish in. And she was having fun pulling some in herself. That lady really loved to fish. But then all of a sudden, I hooked something. And that pole bent double. And I'm like, ooh. And before I knew it, that 80-year-old woman had grabbed me and was making sure I didn't lose that pole. And she helped me reel that thing in. And it was a catfish. Looking back, it was probably about 15 plus pounds. Big old blue cat. And we pulled it right up to the bank of that pond. And that little perch hook broke. Whew. And I'm sitting there with this 80-something-year-old lady. And she jumps in the pond and grabs that fish and throws it on the bank. And she said, he did not just stock this one. She had joy. Even after something would happen, she would lose a child. She would be sad, she would mourn, she would cry. But she would always hit a point where she would say, you know what? I can't let it get me down. And she would stand up and she would go on with her life and she would enjoy what she had left. Whether it was playing cards or fishing or whatever. I know I've told the story before. When we had her 100th birthday, the lady was late for her 100th birthday. The reason she gave when she got there, the fish were biting. And she wasn't coming in until they stopped. We could wait. That was a life looking through the lens of joy, even when life got hard. See, joy truly is a perspective. Paul puts it different in the book of Romans. In the passage that we like to read out of Romans chapter 8 so much, where Paul says, what can separate me from the love of Christ? Powers, principalities, life, death, sickness, nakedness, famine, any bad thing you can think of. And his answer? Nothing can separate me from the love of Christ. And because nothing can separate me, I can look at the life and I can say, pain, you're not going to conquer me. Trouble, you're not going to be my master. I have a master that takes me beyond all this. Maybe I'm going to have to wait a while. Maybe I'm going to have to endure. But joy is what helps us endure. It's joy that lets us look at the problems and say, they're not that bad. There's something better coming. In your life, I know you have pain. We all do. Physical pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, all kinds of pain. But that's not the lens you're supposed to look through. Don't let the pain take control. When pain starts to take control, that's when we start making dumb decisions. That's when we hurt ourselves because we look through this other lens. Can't look through it. It's solid. But you get the idea. And everything we see is tainted red. Everything we see looks bad. everything we see becomes a negative because we're looking through the wrong lens. But if we stay close to Jesus, if we're staying close to Him, if we're living a life of prayer, you know, if you're looking at your life right now and you say, man, I'm a Christian, but I don't have that kind of joy. Let me ask you a question. How often do you pray? How often do you just stop and talk to God and tell Him about whatever's wrong? But also thank Him for what's right. Now, I've never found a point in my life where I could pray that prayer didn't do something. It didn't bring a little peace, even in the worst possible moments. Where it didn't take all the negative that I was focusing on and diminish it somewhat. Prayer is an avenue to joy. One last thing. I skipped over it somewhere in my notes. I'm not sure where I was supposed to say this, but I want to say it before I quit. You want to know how important joy is in your life? Let me ask you a question. Are the fruit of the Spirit important to Christians? Yeah, that's what we're supposed to have. That's what Mark says as a Christian. When Paul in Galatians chapter 5 lists, he goes, these are the fruit of the Spirit in your life. If you have the Spirit in you, you have these qualities. Number 1 was love. Number 2 is joy. Joy is not an option. Joy is not, well, if the situation allows it. Joy is something we as Christians have to pursue. But the good news is, if we pursue it through Christ, He makes sure we find it. Regardless of our situation, regardless of what we face. We as Christians should be the happiest people on the face of the earth. Amen. Absolutely. And it doesn't take a drug, it doesn't take a substance, it doesn't take a situation or money or anything else. Our happiness comes from something so far beyond all that, it can't be contained. So I have a challenge for you. We got a couple more songs to sing. When you sing them with joy. I hope Perry didn't pick any really slow songs. I didn't ask him before I said this. Even if they're slow, put a smile on your face and sing to the God that has overcome all your problems. Whether you've seen the end yet or not, doesn't matter. By faith, we know He has. And when you walk out of here today, after you eat, I was going to say when you go to lunch, but you're staying here. When you're back there enjoying good food, put a smile on your face. When you leave here today and you start talking to other people, let them see the joy in your life. Be a person who rejoices, who expresses it, who lives it. Because this is at the very core of who we are. Not just because we're supposed to be happy, but because our Lord died, sacrificed Himself to put this in our lives. Never sacrifice it. Never let your pain sacrifice your joy. Never let your circumstances sacrifice your joy. Use your joy to overcome all of it.